Tommy Kissinger with Tommy's Truth Talk. Thank you so very much for joining us. On this video, we're going to be talking about the early church fathers, and the early church schools and what they taught. Before we get into that, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, the thumbs up button. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. I'll be reading from a book entitled Heaven's Doors. Heaven's Doors, Wider Than You Ever Believed by George Saris. Mr. George is a friend of mine. I met him several years ago and found out about his writing. We've talked, we've been friends ever since we've met. We invited him to come into Baton Rouge, and he came in and did some teachings over a particular weekend about the ultimate restoration of all things. So, reading from his book here, in this chapter entitled, What Did the Early Church Teach? And so we're going to start a little series here entitled The Early Church. So we're going to jump right in here and start reading from a section entitled Lessons from History. Some very important information that most people are not aware of. And then even when people hear it, they try to explain it away or say it isn't so, or say, hey, that's not right, because the information that is being brought out is so profound and so startling, and it causes you to check what you believe and what you've been taught, and you have to go back and look at it all and just come to terms with this information. So, lessons from history. People are often amazed when they hear that I believe in ultimate restoration. They've been told all their lives that Christians have always believed in endless punishment, so they think I must be like the proud mother who was watching her son march in a parade. She was thrilled as she watched the marchers passing by. Then she leaned over to her friend and said, just look at that. Everyone is marching out of step except my son. One of the most unexpected discoveries for me as I began reading the history of what Christians have believed about hell was that endless punishment was not the prevailing teaching during the first 5 centuries after Christ. Now let's read that again. Endless punishment was not the prevailing teaching during the first 5 centuries after Christ. This was a critical time in the history of the church. It was closest to the apostles. Its influence and impact on the surrounding culture was greater and more effective than at any other time. And its growth was unmatched. And yet during this time, the doctrine of endless punishment wasn't even a central theme of its message. Of the 6 major centers of Christianity in the ancient church, 2, Alexandria and Caesarea, favored the doctrine of ultimate restoration on the principles of probably the most important theologian and biblical scholar of the early Greek church, a man named Origen. And also 2, Antioch and Eastern Syria favored ultimate restoration on the principles of Theodore of Mopsuestia. And 1, Asia Minor, following Irenaeus, held to the annihilation of the wicked. And only 1, Northern Africa, following Tertullian, and Augustine, strongly favored the doctrine of future endless punishment. So there you have it. Of the 6 major centers of learning in early Christianity, 4 out of the 6 taught the ultimate restoration of all things. And so many are not aware of that. Many are not aware. And, we can debate whether it was the predominant view of the day or not, but it was a view in that day in the early church and in and among the early church fathers. The ultimate restoration of all things. Many have never been made aware of this. Many have never been told this, that there was a view in the early church, and it was the ultimate restoration of all things through the Lord Jesus Christ. It's not been brought to their attention. And so this must be brought to our attention so that we can evaluate this all-important teaching of the ultimate restoration of all things, the ultimate reconciliation of all things, the salvation of all through the precious blood of the Lord Jesus Christ, having made peace through the blood of his cross, that he might reconcile all things unto himself through the Lord Jesus Christ. Next time we'll pick up where we left off and talk about some of the specific early church fathers who believed in this ultimate restoration of all things.